The Great Gatsby, a novel written by F. Scott Fitzgerald whose downfall is no less dramatic than the tragic ending of the protagonist in his story. Back in 1925, the world was not ready for this brutal yet honest story to be told. Fitzgerald had ruthlessly torn up the exquisitely empty facade of the Jazz Age by shattering the American dream and exposing the reality of society as we know it. That perhaps not all men are created equal, nor are they endowed, but they are created with these unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The story of The Great Gatsby takes place in the summer of 1922. The novel offers us some flashback to Gatsby's past here and there. These flashbacks are crucial for readers to understand how a poor young man from the Midwest could transform himself into a mysterious millionaire living in Long Island, New York. Let us go all the way back to 1890, when J. Gatsby, whose real name is James Gatz, was born in North Dakota. His parents are poor farmers, but that does not stop him from imagining a different future for himself. In the year of 1907, Gatsby's fate is changed forever when he meets Dan Cody, a millionaire who has taught Gatsby everything he needs to know about the world of the rich. That is also the year James Gatz changes his name to J. Gatsby. In 1912, Dan Cody dies and leaves $25,000 to Gatsby, but his wife uses illegal means to usurp the inheritance from him. Gatsby becomes penniless. Here comes the year of 1914, the beginning of the First World War, the events that has been lurking in the background of the novel. We know that both Nick and Gatsby fight in the war. In 1917, while thousands of men are dying in rat-infested trenches, Gatsby stumbles into the elusive and inexplicable charm of Daisy. They fall in love, and one autumn night, they kiss for the first time, and in that sacred moment, he forever wed his unutterable visions to her perishable breath. Later in that same year, Gatsby has gone off to fight in the war as well. In 1919, Gatsby returns from the Great War and has the opportunity to study at Oxford University. Meanwhile, Daisy marries Tom Buchanan. Gatsby starts working for Maya Wolfsham in 1919, and Daisy gives birth to her daughter Pammy in 1920. Tom and Daisy move to Long Island in 1921, and Nick also moves there a year later. Finally, the Jazz Age commences, and we have come to the summer of 1922, a season of indulgence, excess, and spoiler alert, conspicuous murder. So this is how the story goes. Nick Carraway, our narrator, arrives at Tom and Daisy's elaborate mansion in the more fashionable East Egg for dinner. They have a small dinner party joined by professional golfer Jordan Baker. The conversation is rather stale, there's not much tea to be spilled, except we do learn that Daisy has a daughter and thus the famous line, "And I hope she'll be a fool. That's the best thing a girl can be in this world, a beautiful little fool." Oh, and we also find out that Tom has a girlfriend. The Valley of Ashes, an urban desert located midway between New York City and Long Island, represents the desolation and dehumanization of the working class in America. This is where Tom's girlfriend Myrtle lives with her husband Wilson. Tom pays a visit to Wilson's garage with Nick since he wants Nick to meet Myrtle. They then go to his apartment in New York and get really, really drunk. The next important event has to be the party at Gatsby's place. There's an unlimited flow of champagne, jazz, celebrities, gossip, and the party ends with a car crash. Classic. Nick finds Jordan at this party, and they're greeted by the host himself. We'll later find out that Gatsby throws all these lavish parties every weekend throughout the long summer for a good reason, hoping that Daisy might eventually show up to one of them. With Nick's help, Gatsby eventually reunites with Daisy at Nick's little loft right next to his mansion. The scene is awkward at first, since they haven't seen each other for a very long time. Gatsby is so nervous and stiff that he almost breaks a clock, as if he cannot believe that he actually has the power to go back in time. Or he simply wants to stop time and make that moment last forever. After the brief meeting at Nick's place, they all pay a visit to Gatsby's mansion for a tour. The affair begins and Gatsby stops throwing parties. But of course, this fantastical roller coaster ride of wealth and fame that Gatsby hops on soon comes to an end. On the hottest day of that summer, Daisy, Tom, Gatsby, Nick, and Jordan have a little fun together with liquor and speed driving. Gatsby wants Daisy to tell Tom that she never loved him, but she can't bring herself to say it. Defeated by the indestructible force of the aristocracy in America, Gatsby lets Daisy drive back to Long Island. Foreshadowed by all the reckless drivers in the novel, Daisy kills Tom's mistress, Myrtle, with Gatsby's Rolls Royce. She does not stop and drives on. Wilson, thinking the car belongs to Gatsby, kills Gatsby and himself with a gun on the day Gatsby swims in his pool for the first time that summer. Like every other story of the American dream, the novel ends with a gunshot. The greatness of this novel may not be found in the greatness of J. Gatsby, but in the smallest details, just as the clarity of the truth lies in its vagueness. In this section of the video, we're going to look at how some images and events come to encapsulate the entire novel. On Nick's very first visit to Tom and Daisy's mansion, he offers this amazing visual allegory. The only completely stationary object in the room was an enormous couch on which two young women were buoyed up as though upon an anchored balloon. They were both in white, and their dresses were rippling and fluttering as if they had just been blown back in after a short flight around the house. This surreal, romantic image is then interrupted by Tom as he shuts the window with a rather excessive force. The two young women ballooned slowly to the floor. The passage tells us so much about Daisy's journey in this novel. Her reunion with Gatsby is nothing but a short flight from her reality, and of course, Tom pulls her back down just in time. As casual or neutral this image may seem, Fitzgerald hid all sorts of clues in his words to intensify the minute details with a tremendous thematic weight. Another seemingly unimportant scene in the novel is when Nick visits Tom and Myrtle's apartment in New York. This gathering is later joined by Myrtle's sister, Catherine, and Mr. and Mrs. Key. Mr. Key is a photographer and is in the artistic game, whatever that means. Near the end of the night, Nick makes some interesting observations. People disappeared, reappeared, made plans to go somewhere, and then lost each other. Searched for each other, found each other a few feet away. If we read closely, this short passage is a mini version of the story between Gatsby and Daisy. They disappear and resurface as the current of life drives them to drift along. They lost each other, searched for each other, and Gatsby finally finds Daisy just across the bay. Last but not least, among all the gossip concerning the real identity of Gatsby, there is one that caught my attention. While there are rumors that Gatsby has killed a man or that he is a German spy during the war, there was one persistent story, that he didn't live in a house at all, but in a boat that looked like a house and was moved secretly up and down the Long Island shore. We can quite confidently say that there's not much truth in this story, literally. However, if we take a closer look, this story has much symbolic depth for Gatsby's desire. Gatsby would dream of reaching the green light on the dock of Daisy's house. It would not be too difficult to imagine that he would want to turn his mansion into a boat so that he can casually float to the other side of the shore to meet Daisy. A boat that looks like a house may be a subtle irony dropped by Fitzgerald as an allegorical representation of all the characters in this novel. They may appear to be genuine people, but turn out to be artificial and insincere. Finally, Gatsby would give anything to move up the Long Island shore, or perhaps more symbolically, the social ladder in America. But of course, the higher you climb, the harder you fall, and the deeper you drown in the unforgiving water of the aristocracy. For my next video, I'll be discussing the themes and motifs in The Great Gatsby. Thank you for watching.